The title for the video for the 11th of October is Reflections on Manipulation in My Life. When I felt like I was having another heart attack after coming home from church on Sunday, I laid in bed reflecting. I realized how I have been manipulated, how previous generations in my family tree, and how my own children have experienced the same pattern. I was reminded of the scripture, the sins of the father are visited on the children to the third and fourth generation. Has this gone on for thousands of years? I think it has. And while I see it as insane now, it does seem to be an explanation of why the world is the way it is. Did the real creator from the beginning do it? Or is it the fake god, Lucifer, posing as an angel of light? As usual, this year especially, I have been challenging lots of my ideas that seem to form the patterns of my life. And I remember how when I was dating a particular person before we got married, how I tried, I think it was either 2 or 3 times, to break up with that individual. And each time there would be a crying spell, and she would say, if you break up with me, I'm going to kill myself. And so I didn't. And the night before the wedding, I went to my parents and I said, I think I'm making the biggest mistake of my life. Now, I don't want to say or leave the impression that I never felt any love for her. And I certainly felt love for our children that are still in my life today. But I look at the life of my son especially, and I see, even though he has rejected some of my concepts of God, he still helps people. And the people that he helps are often suicidal, and they often come with threats. In fact, his marriage, he married a lady with 4 children, none of them his, at least that had at least 3 or 4 different fathers, none of them his again. But he married her, and it was the same thing. It was threats, and it was manipulation. And that marriage only lasted 5 years, but he had to, she cut his drum heads to keep him from drumming because she was jealous of his passion for drumming. He's had a passion for drumming since he was a little kid, starting on pots and pans and anything else he could pound on. And that's his passion. You don't take somebody's passion away, even if it's a spiritual passion like mine has been. And yet I have to challenge, how did this all start? Where did it come from? Did it come from the original creator? And Anastasia says, and originally it wasn't like it is now. But they created a priestcraft that used their priesthood to enslave humanity. Instead of just enslaving them with whips and threats and stuff like that, they paid them so that it was a subtle slavery. It was a slavery that didn't seem like slavery, but it was, again, manipulation. And I've seen this pattern as I reflected laying in bed yesterday. I see this pattern repeated over and over and over again. And the more details that I know about individuals in my own life, the more I see a similar pattern. We don't make free decisions. Our decisions are usually based on manipulation, that we are cornered and sort of directed into a certain path that we wouldn't have necessarily chosen on our own free will, but we're guided into that pathway that isn't always a good pathway. Now, is this karma? That's the question. The sins of the fathers are visited on the children of the third or fourth generation. The children have to pay for the sins of the father. What kind of justice is that? I don't see any justice in it at all. Shouldn't we all start with a clean slate? But we don't. We don't. And we have patterns of manipulation where we face things that we would never, of our own free will, consciously choose. And yet here we are facing horrible situations in many cases and having to make difficult decisions on what we're going to do and how we're going to handle the things that have been presented to us in our lives. And I say been presented to us because I don't think it comes from free will. I really do believe that most, or at least much, of what we experience does not come from free choice, but from manipulative patterns that come from some other source, be it God or be it Lucifer. Now, I'd like to think of God as being a loving, omniscient, omnipotent creator who actually has the best interest of creation at heart. And yet, when I look at life on planet Earth, which of course it says in the Bible that Satan is the god of this world, why would they make an evil entity god of any world that does not register in my mind? Why would that be allowed? It doesn't register. And that's where all the manipulation comes from. It comes from the dark side. Or does it? See, that's the dilemma that I'm faced with this year in 2016. As I look at my life and as I look at the world around me, so many things challenge my rationality, my sensibilities, the dream of what I thought my life was supposed to be about. And so often it has actually been very, very different than what I thought and how I framed things. I would often try to paint a good face on things and make the best of it. I did that 14 years in my marriage. I stayed married to the woman who ended up being unfaithful to me, starting with my nephew by marriage, who was barely half her age. And yet that's where it all began, with 2 years of unfaithfulness and me forgiving her because I thought that was what was required of me. Forgive, forgive, forgive. Until finally I said, I can't do that. I can't do this anymore. And I'm going to get a divorce, which was against my religion. But that's what I was going to do. And again, the threat of suicide. Well, if you divorce me, I'm going to kill. Well, I said, go ahead. I went and got a knife and I said, go ahead. If that's all you think of your life, be my guest. I want to watch. And that's exactly how I said it. I remember saying it. I want to watch. Of course, she didn't commit suicide. She went on with her pattern of behavior at that time, which was she was a sex addict and liked to have lots of different people. That's what she discovered about herself. I at the time when she was going through all this, I had never had sex with anybody except her, and I was a virgin when we got married. I don't believe she was, but I don't know. It's not for me to decide, and it's not for me to judge. It's for me to forgive and to just look at these things and do the best that I can to rise above them and be the best that I can be. So on that thought, those thoughts, I leave you, and once again I say namaste.